This is We the People News, educational, not attorney, not giving legal advice.
Okay, this is actually one I got online and I sanitized it. Jurisdictional challenge, court lacks personal jurisdiction. John Smith denies that this court has jurisdiction over his person. John Smith denies being a citizen of the United States, citizen of the federal government via the 14th Amendment, being an alien from another country, being anything other than a citizen of the state in which he's domiciled, which is Idaho. John Smith reserves all rights secured to him by the Idaho Constitution, which includes both enumerated and unenumerated rights, denies any power exercised by government can arise from any place except from powers delegated to it via a constitution. John Smith denies that this court can be empowered by the Idaho Constitution or the U.S. Constitution to acquire jurisdiction over the alleged defendant. Pro se pleadings are to be considered without regard to technicality. Pro se litigants' pleadings are not to be held to the same high standards of perfection as lawyers. Additional pro se litigants are to be given reasonable opportunity to remedy the defects in their pleadings. While the alleged defendant has been accused of being a defendant subject to this court's jurisdiction, this fails to be factual on the basis that the Idaho Constitution or any constitution fails to confer any authority of this court over the alleged defendant, and as such the alleged defendant denies that he can be legally classified as a defendant until such time as the plaintiff can prove that it has standing. Its representative, the district attorney, herein after DA, has standing to act as a public prosecutor, and that this court has jurisdiction over the alleged defendant. Demurrer in pleading Black's Law Third. The formal mode of disputing the sufficiency in law of the pleading of the other side, in effect, is an allegation that even if the facts are stated in the pleading in which objections are taken to be true, yet their legal consequences are not such as to put the demurring party to any necessity of answering them or proceeding further with the cause. An objection made by one party to this opponent's pleading alleged that he ought not to answer it for some defect in the law or in the pleading. A demurrer cannot lawfully be denied or dismissed. It must be overcome by proof it is false. Oops. Overview of this demurrer. The Idaho statutes taken as a whole are void for vagueness when it comes to those people like the alleged defendant who are only citizens of their states. Idaho statutes are not true laws of Idaho as authorized by Idaho Constitution to be imposed on those people that are only citizens of their state. The charging instrument is defective. The plaintiff lacks standing. The district attorney lacks standing. The alleged defendant fails to be a person subject to the system of law this court enforces. The court constitutionally barred from acquiring jurisdiction over the alleged defendant, override alleging irrelevant fact. Due to the above being true, this court cannot acquire jurisdiction over the alleged defendant and is therefore duty bound by the Idaho and United States Constitutions to dismiss this case and order the alleged defendant released. John Smith alleges that any other action will constitute a violation of the rules of due process applicable to the alleged defendant and will constitute a violation of your oath. Therefore, if the court has jurisdiction of the parties and subject matter, its actions are not void, no matter how erroneous they may be. On the other hand, judicial action without jurisdiction is void, where the court is without jurisdiction and has no authority to do anything other than dismiss the case. Judicial action without jurisdiction is void. And that's Not versus State. Idaho statutes are void for vagueness. John Smith alleges that laws are overbreadth or void for vagueness if they impinge on or chill any constitutionally protected conduct, substantial or otherwise. John Smith alleges that this is a court that enforces all laws on all people at all time, even though this court is deemed to know that not all people are subject to the jurisdiction of this court or all the laws codified in Idaho statutes. In fact, there's reason to question the authority of even the judicial branch court to enforce violations of the state statutes on people such as the alleged defendant, because the Idaho statutes are not the actual laws of Idaho. The alleged defendant further alleges that due to the ambiguous format in which Idaho statutes are written, they're void for vagueness. So void, in fact, that they cannot be deemed to be public writings, as such writings are required to be written in such simple language the average person can easily read and understand them. The Idaho statutes do not, in clear and easy to understand terms, differentiate between A, those that only codify laws that only apply to United States citizens and foreign aliens in a state, and B, those that codify laws that also apply to those people like the alleged defendant that are only citizens of a state. Grain versus City of Rockford, U.S. Supreme Court, it's a basic principle of due process that an enactment is void for vagueness if its prohibitions are not clearly defined. Vague laws offend several important values. First, because we assume that man is free to steer between lawful and unlawful conduct, we must insist that laws give the person of ordinary intelligence a reasonable opportunity to know what's prohibited so that he may act accordingly. Vague laws may trap the innocent by not providing fair warning. Second, if arbitrary or discriminatory enforcement is to be prevented, laws must provide explicit standards for those who apply them. A vague law impermissibly delegates basic policy matters to policemen, judges, and juries for resolution on an ad hoc, subjective basis with the attendant dangers of arbitrary and discriminatory application. Third, but related, where a vague statute abuts upon sensitive areas of basic First Amendment freedoms, it operates to inhibit the exercise of those freedoms. Uncertain meanings inevitably lead citizens to steer far wider of the unlawful zone than if the boundaries of the forbidden areas were clearly marked. U.S. versus Mikowski, due process requires statute to be sufficiently clear so as to not cause person of common intelligence necessarily to guess at its meanings and to differ as to its application. Related to but distinct from the vagueness doctrine is the doctrine of overbreadth. And see Colander versus Lawson. A law is overbroad if it prohibits not only acts the legislature may forbid, but also constitutionally protected conduct. Considering that there are two completely independent classes of citizens in the several states addressed further down, when the Idaho statutes are taken as a whole, it is impossible to discern which statutes apply to whom, thus causing those people that are only citizens of their states to refrain from conduct the Idaho Constitution secures as a protected right for them to engage in. This is actually some really good arguments. Alleged defendant alleges that the Idaho statutes are both void for vagueness and overbreadth when they are imposed upon those people like the alleged defendant, which are only citizens of their state, because in plain language they do not give sufficient notice to state-only citizens like the alleged defendant, and that the police or judges what conduct is criminalized and what is not, thus causing individuals to defer from engaging in conduct that is constitutionally protected and subjecting state-only citizens to unpleasant forced police interactions and prosecution for constitutionally protected conduct. John Smith alleges that the Idaho statutes, when imposed on those people that are only citizens of their state, such as the alleged defendant, operate to criminalize constitutionally protected conduct. John Smith further denies that the said statutes can be used in a charging instrument for people like the alleged defendant who are only citizens of their state. There are codified within the Idaho statutes, A, those laws that the state legislature has authorized by the state constitution to make and impose on those people like the alleged defendant that are only citizens of the state and which enforcement can only be accomplished by a judicial branch court, and B, there are those laws codified within that only apply to citizens of the United States and foreign aliens in the state that are administrative in nature. The majority of the statutes comprise laws that only apply to citizens of the United States and foreign aliens in Idaho, which can be enforced in a legislatively created municipal court. John Smith denies that the Idaho statutes clearly differentiate between those codified laws that apply only to citizens of the United States, foreign aliens, and people like the alleged defendant, which are only citizens of Idaho. John Smith further alleges that the Idaho statutes are void for vagueness when it comes to the alleged defendant. This court enforces all statutes and recognizes none of the limitations imposed on judicial branch courts when enforcing laws upon state-only citizens such as the alleged defendant.
Alrighty. So, to clear to comprehend, there's a difference between administrative, what you guys call judges, which is magistrates, and judicial judges. And even though that people are sitting in prison now, most of the time, not giving legal advice, do your own research, okay? It's educational purposes only, that they've been done by administrative and not the true judicial, not a true judge. All right? Everything's been processed through the administrative, even in criminal, okay? So, technically, they're violating your rights, allegedly. All right. Going to make another video.